Good morning, everybody. Well, you've spent the whole morning so far talking about banks, and as we know, this is a continent that's probably overbanked. The cliche of 80% of lending and fundraising in the European Union done through banks, and 20% done through the capital markets, and the opposite percentage in the United States. I guess the question, we are in the context here of a capital markets union. You know, how much does it expect to do? How much more could it do? I think we've got an interesting panel here to talk about that. I'm going to ask each one of them what thing are they most optimistic about in the current state of Europe as far as investment is concerned, and what are the things that sort of keep them up at night? What's the one thing that they most worry about? And I'm going to follow the order of the program here, or my program, and ask Dieter Hoeppner, the Chief Executive of Invest Europe, to answer.
Right, so many thanks, Stephen. So Invest Europe, we represent venture capital, private equity, also institutional investors, so those that invest into these asset classes. And for them, for all of them, Europe is a great place to invest, actually. So it was pretty gloomy this morning so far when we heard about banking union-related issues. But one shouldn't forget that Europe is full of entrepreneurs and businesses, enterprises that are actually able to compete on a global basis with their peers also in the US. And we do see that, and so obviously our members do invest in Europe, and we also see more and more venture capital funds from the US to invest in European businesses. If you go to Berlin these days, they have all set up shop there. They're all invested in quite a number of young innovative companies. And so this is something that is clearly a very exciting development, something quite recent, I must say. Venture capital, please keep in mind, doesn't have such a long tradition as in the US. And so, of course, all the regulation following the financial market crisis had also unintended consequences on this development to mature venture capital, private equity in Europe. And this is why we very much welcome the CMU initiative, which rather seeks to look into the files again, the policy files again, and to fix things where needed. And so if you do ask me what is of most concern and what is keeping us awake at night, I'm rather positive about Europe. Maybe we have the tendency to be too negative as a whole, and we always forget that other parts of the world are watching us closely, institutional investors from Asia, from North America, and when we are fighting and discussing things here and have this tendency to be quite negative about things, what's going on here, then this is noticed, and that, of course, doesn't help the case for Europe. So this is maybe the one thing that I would criticize a bit.
So the most negative thing is we're all too negative.
Yes, very much so.
Isabel Mateos Cielagos is Senior Advisor to BlackRock. Would you?
Sure, thank you. So starting with the positive, I would say perhaps the approach the Commission has taken to taking forward this Capital Markets Union initiative has been one of the greatest cause for optimism. This is a Commission that is pragmatic and that is trying to listen to the needs of investors and both the institutions but also the end investors, and that is trying to fill gaps and not invent solutions to problems that don't exist, as was sometimes the case in the past. So that's a great cause for optimism. And I would add to that, perhaps that's the silver lining to the doom and gloom that surrounds the banking sector, that it probably adds to the perception of urgency in the collective psyche about the need to get this capital markets union really up and running as fast as possible, because it's simply not healthy to rely so overwhelmingly on the banks. The cause for concern is more what's happening in Europe. And ultimately, for foreign investors, for any investor, what matters is there going to be growth, and can I be reasonably confident that the policies that are in place today are going to be in place tomorrow, that there's going to be some degree of predictability. And I think 3 to 6 months ago, there was quite a lot of excitement around Europe because people thought, okay, now we're getting supportive monetary policy, we're getting less unsupportive fiscal policy, confidence is better, things are looking up. And now we're back into the doom and gloom again. And so that's really a worry. And there isn't really much of a sense that the policy-making process is anywhere near, at the European level, is anywhere near giving investors the kind of certainty and confidence into the future that they would need to really be prepared to make long-term commitments. So that's a lingering concern.
I mean, the problem again at policy making, I mean, the markets run a lot faster than policymakers, and that's probably especially evident in Europe, I guess. Alexander Schindler is a member of the executive board of the Union Asset Management Holding and the president of IFAMA. What's the positive and what's the thing that worries you?
I think in general there's a lot of positive, not only because of CMU. I think with the current, both Parliament as well as Commission, there has been a much more proactive, constructive dialogue with all stakeholders involved. And if I have one wish, I would say in the future you should first assess and then regulate, and not the other way around. And I think we are on a good way. We are in what has been discussed earlier in transition in implementing regulation. But I mean, our topic is really looking from the international perspective at Europe or at the globe and where to invest. And as I think Axel Weber took it in his panel, basically from the international perspective, you have 3 main investment regions, which is the Americas, basically the US, Europe, and Asia. And what are you looking for as an international investor? But also, I mean, I represent the European industry, also European investors, being it long-term institutional ones or retail investors. You look at long-term stable returns, because we are not in for short-term trading or hedging. We look for transparency. We want to understand what's in the business, being it on the fixed income side or on the equity side. You look for state-of-the-art governance rules in all aspects, being it on the corporate level or on the public level. And that's basically, I think, the ingredients that you need. What we definitely need in Europe after this first phase of regulation is stability, in particular with regard to the long-term investment programs like infrastructure investments. I mean, we talk about investment span of 20, 25, 30 years. If you recall the 2 examples given by Reinhard. That is important, that for such a long term you have a stable environment to invest. And I think that's it. And last but not least, I think what's important is we all have to promote Europe. It's not an easy task. If you talk to Japanese people or people in Hong Kong, they will ask you what is happening in Europe. I mean, there was first this sovereign debt crisis. Now we have this political, let's say, instability or discussions going on. You can only overcome this uncertainty which is present outside Europe, about Europe, if you again and again promote. And it's not only politicians. We have this tendency in Europe that we rather ask the governments to take care of these issues. It's also all of us. We are all stakeholders in this.
But it's not that they don't have any issues in Japan, and it's not that Asia is a total safe place to invest. And I think that is something, sorry if I'm adding, but I would really like to add that. It's, it's also about comparing the regions, and you just very well said it. And if you look at the US, if you look at how the political system is working there and what we might expect as an outcome of the next election, it's also not maybe the most, secured place to invest in. So I think in the competition of all these world regions, Europe is actually quite attractive. if you compare it to other regions, and stability aspects. But of course, we can always do better. I'm not saying that, we should lay back and all is good. There are clearly areas to improve things.